What do you think is like initially so confusing about the stock market?
I really, truly believe that the amount of money that we bring in and that we have is a reflection of how much we value ourselves. There was this deep desire for me to one day have a house that looked like the ones my mom used to clean.
Hello. Happy Monday, everyone. I hope you all had a really great September and are ready for October. Oh, my favorite season, you guys. I love it. I love anything pumpkin and just excited about the fall and feeling a little like, I don't know, fall and winter are my favorite, you guys. Anyways, on today's episode, we're going to talk about the stock market. I know this topic can be a little intimidating, which is why I'm excited for all of you to meet today's guest. She's really great at explaining the stock market and teaching us about how we can use it to build wealth. So get ready. This is a good one. This is Chiquis and Chill. So before we introduce today's guest, I just want to give you guys a little disclaimer. This episode is meant to be helpful and informative, but it's not meant to be taken as professional financial advice. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, today's special guest is Linda Garcia. She's a brilliant financial educator who works to empower communities of color. She's also the host of the podcast Investies and the author of the book Wealth Warrior: 8 Steps for Communities of Color to Conquer the Stock Market. Linda, welcome. It is so nice to finally meet you. I've heard so many great things about you. We have mutual friends, actually.
We do. Thank you for having me and opening up your space to this conversation.
No, of course. I'm excited. I think this is something that we definitely need to talk about more in our communities, especially as Latinas. We, at least for me, well, my mom was kind of good with showing me how to like save money and stuff like that. I just didn't listen. Now I'm better because I learned the hard way. But anyways, I did want to ask you a little bit more about you, about your background, because I think it's really interesting. A lot of people are like, oh my God, she's successful. And they don't really see the struggle behind that. They think, oh, her life must have been so easy. And that wasn't necessarily the case for you. You know, you were a mother at 14 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah. At 14 years old, I became a mother. I was also in gangs. I was just living a life that was very challenging. I stopped living with my parents at 12 years old, and it was just extremely difficult. Like, I truly became the definition of a statistic. I feel like that was much more common back in the 90s. Like, oh, she's a statistic, and you kind of get discarded in your family and extended family and even in society. So that was extremely difficult for me to go through as just a human being, as a child. And to think that I was no longer going to amount to anything because I, had a child was disheartening. And so I lived a pretty rough experience. I had positive influences in my life, which became my teachers, who really nurtured me in high school. I even lived with one of my teachers at one point in time. And it's really because of them that I attribute the woman that I've become today. Completely because of my teachers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because your parents were also immigrants, right?
Yes.
So you've worked your way and you've worked very hard to get to this point.
Yes. And I feel like it's still a lot of work. I mean, even today, I really love economics and I love learning about what is taking place in the economy, just to understand and process how we can navigate the future in a much more strategic way. And even just like today, listening to the economy, because we just got notified that there will be a pause on rate hikes. We're trying to tackle inflation for the country. And I'm like listening to these people speak and I'm really trying to keep up. And I'm like, wow, they're so far ahead. And a lot of them look my age, and will I ever be that intelligent? Like, there's still so much work that goes into what I do on a day-to-day basis, but I have to remind myself that I'm on my own journey and that I'm not less intelligent. I'm just learning at this point in time. And there's still a lot of room ahead.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I tell people all the time is not to compare yourself to other people and their growth and their progress, to focus. And sometimes it's a little hard. It's hard not to, but you have to remind yourself, like, it's okay. We're still learning day by day. The good thing is that there's that desire. We're striving to want to be better in every way. When did this love for the stock market or learning about generational wealth, even all of this, where did it come from?
Yeah, I grew up watching my mom clean houses. She cleaned houses mainly in Laguna Beach. And so I had so much exposure to a lot of money via going with her to going to clean houses. There was this deep desire for me to one day have a house that looked like the ones my mom used to clean, or have celebrations and Christmas dinners or Thanksgivings in the way that they celebrated. Like, I just watched them with my mom working, and I wanted that for myself. It wasn't until after I had my daughter that I really had strong ambition. There's something to be said about being a mother. It's almost like it unleashes like a lioness. And even though I was young, it unleashed that for me. And so I had, again, that deep-seated ambition to become something and do something for my daughter and myself, and not repeat some of the same stories of the way I grew up. And so I began to study wealth overall. Like, I started to look at patterns and just research, like, how did this person get rich? And mostly everyone I was researching was, of course, the way we say old, pale, and stale. And so it was just like, you know, all these older white men. And I started to see a pattern, which was every time there was economic hardship, like a recession, that was when their wealth would multiply a crazy amount. And so I started to really focus on that, on those types of patterns. And then I began to work at Netflix, and I had a white colleague that began educating me on the stock market. And I started to understand that there was an opportunity there for me to begin investing and growing my money in that way. And so I started to do that, and I opened up about my investing. One of my good friends, Patty Rodriguez, we were just at the start of our careers back in 2012, and we would talk about the stock market. We had another friend named Garcia as well, and the three of us would just strategize. Then I just became a student of the market. I ended up investing a total of $9,000. Those $9,000 turned into $500,000. The amount that I was investing was an amount that I could process. It was $200 a month. And so I was shocked that we never use the stock market as a vehicle to grow wealth. We think of real estate, we think of entrepreneurship, but we rarely think about the stock market. And so I started to do more and more research, and I began to understand that only 15% of Americans actually hold direct stock.
Only 15%. Wow, that's crazy.
And out of those 15%, it's the top 10% most wealthiest people in the country. So a lot of people don't have access to stock. It's intimidating. Even when you open the conversation, you're like, it gives me anxiety, you know, and that's normal.
Okay, so I think you and I need to have like an even longer conversation just so we could sit down, and I think I'm going to need your help in my life. Because you're right. I think, okay, we grow up in compra tu casa. You need to buy your house, and that's where, and yes, I think that's great, but I've been intimidated is the word, to invest and put my money in the stock market. And thank goodness for you. Now I'm like, okay. And I'm hoping our listeners as well are kind of like, okay, even if it doesn't have to be a large amount, it could be like you said, you started with $9,000, which is still a lot for a lot of people, but still, can you start with $1,000?
Yes. And so I want to be very clear as well. It was $200 a month how I started. So
okay, yes.
The $9,000 was over the span of 3 years, but I was just investing little chunks every single month and being consistent. I think the biggest message I want to convey, and I think to bring you a little bit at ease, Chiquis, is like, it's really easy for us to walk into an Apple store and purchase a phone, purchase a computer, AirPods, whatever the case may be. We are not afraid to walk into Apple and purchase products for the most part, right? We understand that we can use those products as an investment and start a business off of our phone. We understand the value of it. And so the way I want folks to start looking at the stock market is in the same way. I want you to not just be a consumer of the products, because we are some of the biggest consumers in our community in the United States. I want you to start to look at the opportunity of being a shareholder and owning a piece of Apple, as well as purchasing the product. and then getting the benefit of the stock increasing in value and then your investment increasing in value. It's easy for us to think about purchasing a home because our ancestors, our family members, our community members have all broken the barriers of doing that. It's a common experience for us to purchase a home, but it's also still very challenging for folks to save 20%. Real estate is very expensive in places like California and New York, and you have to have a stable job for 2 years and have credit. There's all of these barrier to entry in order to get started. With the stock market, all you need is your social security number. You open an account and then you can start building your portfolio and start building assets. It's really that simple.
Wow.
Owning a house requires more effort on your part than purchasing a stock.
Okay, so the first step for sure is open an account.
Yeah, so that's the first step in action. And I go through that in my book. I lay it out really easily. I even go through the steps of how to open the account, how to fill out the form. I just lay it out so that you can do it, like you can execute it. At the core of all of this work, so the very first step before you open the account, I want you to be aware of the emotional work that you're going to do as you move through the process. Because we can take in all of the financial literacy, whether it's to buy real estate or to buy stocks or how to invest or save for retirement, all we want. But if we're not focusing on our mindset and our scarcity, then it's going to be really difficult for us to really be able to multiply our money in ways that we've never imagined. If we fear losing money, if we're emotionally attached and fear investing into ourselves or into anything else, that's going to be our biggest roadblock. And for so many of us, child of immigrants, it's easy for us to get caught up in scarcity or fears of there not being enough outside of us. So I always like to share that the first most important step is going to be working on your money stories, your money wounds, and that's what I go over in the first chapter of the book. I find it really important to cover that first, especially from where we come from and not having these types of opportunities and being intimidated from participating in the stock market. So all of that is really important.
I absolutely love that because I'm a firm believer in what you think, what you say, it's what you attract, so it's all literally mind, body, and soul. Where do we go to set up an account to start trading? Is there like a minimum amount as well?
Great question. So it's really important for me to convey that I would like for folks to stay away from online platforms, so to speak. When I say online platforms, I mean like Robinhood type platforms. I've been saying this for a really long time, for years now. They really target people of color. There's a lot of things that have gone wrong with that company in terms of giving people accounts that were not the right accounts for the person. They've been known to overcharge on the price of a stock more than what the stock is actually valued for at the time. And we may not notice because it's a few cents, but all of those things matter. And here's the other thing. When you start investing, you want to go to a company that is established and that has the backing, especially during challenging economic times. You don't want to go to a new company that was just established. You want to go with the old money. That's the way we're going to be the safest. There's 2 brokerage accounts out there. One of them is really great just because they have fractional shares. So let me explain really quickly what a fractional share is. Let's say you want an Apple share and the Apple share costs $100. And you right now don't have the budget to buy the share for $100. With a fractional share, you can just invest $5, $10, $50, $75, $1 if you wanted, to buy a piece of a share. So you don't need a minimal amount. You can start with whatever you have. And the way I like for our community to start is the way I say it is start with what you're okay with losing. Just because I want you to emotionally unattach yourself from money. and not be like, oh my gosh, my money, if the stock market comes down a little, which it will, and sometimes it'll come down a lot, I don't want you to have anxiety or overwhelm over what the money is doing. I want you to learn to emotionally break away from the money and just invest it and watch what it feels like to let go of money and have money work for you. It can feel painful in the short amount of time because it's volatile, but in years from now, you're going to be grateful that you began to do that type of work of letting go of money and begin investing it, and you're going to be able to see the return on your investment. So there's no minimum to start. Fractional shares can be found in a company like Fidelity. There's also E-Trade. There's several big companies, I list them in the book as well, that you can open your brokerage account with.
So you guys, you have to read the book, okay? But still, we're going to get as much as we can from Linda today. But you even say that DACA recipients can also enter the stock market as well. So that's great to know.
Yeah, so all you need is either an ITIN number or a social security number. So if you're a DACA recipient, you can start building your assets and start building your portfolio. You can use your portfolio as leverage for when you do want to buy a house. It counts as part of your net worth. It's important for me to also convey that you can get started from the day that you are born. The day that you're given an ITIN number or the day that you're given a social security number, you can start building your assets and have a portfolio. So for any parents out there that have younger children or nieces and nephews, you can start a custodial account. And that is an account that you manage for a child in your life. When they turn 18, that portfolio becomes their portfolio.
So how do you determine which stocks you should buy into? Like, are there any tips, anything that you recommend?
Absolutely. So the way I want you all to look at this is I want you to think of the companies that are mostly used. A lot of the times folks think, oh, the stock market, I need to find a needle in a haystack, or what's going to be the next big thing. I don't want you to think that way. I want you to think about the companies that we are all dependent on. What phone do you use? What computer do you use? What are you turning on when you're watching television? Like, I literally want you to think of what you're most dependent on in your day-to-day. And then once you look at what you're dependent on, I want you to start to see what everyone else is dependent on as well. So it's the products that everyone is using. Like, are you shopping at Target or are you shopping at Walmart? I just want you to look at the companies that you solely depend on and that everyone else does as well. I don't want you to try and find the next big thing. That becomes a little bit more challenging and riskier. You want to invest into companies that you use, that you consume. And then I want you to look at it like building a pantry. So think of your pantry, and I don't recommend that you try to invest in a ton of different companies. I want you to stay focused and look at it as like, ¿qué comida vas a poner en la mesa? So let's think of something very simple. Like one company, look at it as like arroz. Another company, look at it as frijolitos. Another company, look at it as tortillas. And every month, compras un frijolito, un granito de arroz, una tortilla, month after month after month. And then eventually, you're going to have una olla de frijoles y arroz y tortillas, you know, to serve not just for you, but for your entire family. So that's kind of the way I want folks to look at it, is companies that we consume and that we know we can't live without.
That is perfect, because I love food and I'm a very visual person. So now I could be like, quiero mi platito, and I'm going to turn that into a freaking feast.
Yes.
That's like an awesome way of like, okay, cool, you got me. Comidita, frijolitos, una tortilla. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, is there a good or a bad time to start or to buy stock?
There's a great time to buy stock, and it's typically when the market is down. And so we only get those opportunities every 10 years. We're in one of those opportunities right now. So typically the stock market will crash every 10 years. We just recently had a crash. We had 2 back-to-back crashes during COVID because of the pandemic, and then again because of the war with Ukraine and Russia. And so the stock market comes down, you have to look at it as like these companies are a lot cheaper than what they were a few years ago. So you're starting to buy them at a cheaper price. And then we can anticipate for the stock market to begin its recovery, which it has. It's been a year almost in October that it has been recovering. And we can anticipate based on historical patterns that it will continue to grow in the next 10 years. So this is actually one of the best times to get started on your investing journey and understanding the process of the market and remembering that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And, I'm working diligently to create resources so that we can understand and digest the information from a completely different perspective, from a child of immigrants, from someone that was deep in scarcity mindset. That I work to overcome that on a day-to-day basis.
Do you think, because you started, how long ago you said investing in the stock market?
I started in 2013, so 10 years ago.
Okay, 10 years ago. And do you think things have changed? Do you think it's still possible to do what you did, like invest the amount that you've invested and made the amount that you've made?
Absolutely, always. So, someone that we are really familiar with in terms of the amount of wealth that they have is Warren Buffett. When he started when he was 11 years old investing in the stock market. And so that's what's gotten him to where he is today. And he started with McDonald's, Johnson & Johnson, and Coca-Cola. And so he still holds a lot of those investments to this day. And so I want us to look at the stock market as an opportunity for us to invest in America. That's something that Warren Buffett always says, like, why wouldn't you want to own a piece of America, one of the biggest, most wealthiest countries in the world? We'd want to own the companies that have come out of this country. So I foresee the stock market being a viable investment for centuries, generations to come. I think what holds us back is definitely the lack of knowledge. Like, we're not taught these things in school. Most of the stock market education is generational knowledge, which is equivalent to generational wealth. It's really interesting for me. I have a 7-year-old son, and then I have my 29-year-old daughter that I had when I was a teen. And I've gotten to see the difference in the way both of them think. Don't get me wrong. My daughter is incredible. She owns a school. She's very successful in her own right. I'm very proud of her.
My God, you should be. I'm like, my eyes are tearing up. This is amazing. Okay. It's because, I'm so sorry. Yes. It's because coming from like where you came from and you had her at 14, like this is amazing. And you should be so proud of yourself. Like Thank you. Girl. Oh my God, we have to go to dinner. Anyways, go ahead.
Yes, let's do it. Me, you, and Patty. Yeah. We got to make it happen.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I've gotten to see the way she has moved through life and navigated it and her struggles, where my son is in a completely different world. He was watching a wrestling movie, and in the movie, there was this man that goes into the restaurant to hold up, to like steal the money from the cash register using his finger and hiding his hand over his jacket. My son pauses the movie and says, I feel so bad for him. And I was like, the guy getting robbed, the kid under the table, like, who do you feel bad for? And he's like, I feel bad for the man that is robbing the restaurant. And I was like, why? He's like, because he's just looking for money. And I was like, you're right. Yeah, he is just looking for money. And he's like, and he doesn't know where to get money. And I was like, and where do you get money? And he's like, the stock market. And he was 3.
Oh my God, I love it. I love that.
So, and that's what I mean, right? Is like, that's generational wealth. Like, I might think, oh, no me está poniendo atención, or he doesn't know what's going on in my life, but he was 3 years old and able to understand that you get money from the stock market. And so I think like that's also generational wealth, is like the knowledge that we acquire and the things that we start paying attention to will be the things that our children pay attention to. Just like a lot of us that are children of immigrants and watched our parents work really hard, our perception of making money is a lot different than someone that didn't break their back or hurt their mental health trying to put food on the table. So I think this education is really important for our communities.
Absolutely. And I think that's what it is, lack of information, because so many people are afraid, but because they don't know, preguntamos. Like, it's like, I don't want to seem dumb, so I'd rather not ask, and it's like, no, there's so much power in asking questions and informing yourself. I'm so happy about that we're able to talk about this. And what do you think is like initially so confusing about the stock market?
Oh, it has its own language. It's like speaking a foreign language. There's so many terms and abbreviations. There's so much, but I put a glossary in the back of the book. I break things down with analogies. I help you process and understand. I paint the picture for you so that you can really grasp what they're saying. I refuse that we not participate in the stock market because we don't understand the language. And so that's why it was so important for me to begin teaching this. The book is in libraries. It's a resource. It's accessible. We no longer can say that we don't have the resources because I'm working really hard to create those on a day-to-day basis.
Amazing. I love it. And I love the colors that you chose, and it's fun. And do you recommend companies where they have financial advisors and then they say, okay, how much money do you want to put in the stock market? Do you recommend something like that, or is it just better to do it yourself?
So this is a really great question. I love this question. This is going to be different for different folks depending on the budget that you have, because sometimes financial advisors require for you to have a certain amount of money to begin investing. So you have the liberty to do it on your own. But if you want to have a financial advisor, I think that that's great as well. And here is my perspective on this. Everyone has money wounds. Everyone has fears on different scales, right? It looks different for everybody. So I just want you to understand that when you have a financial advisor, just because they're a financial advisor, that doesn't mean that they don't have their own money stories and their own fears. So they may be making decisions on your money that is right for them. And it may not necessarily be right for you, but if you don't understand the stock market at all, you might not even know what is right for you. I get so many messages from folks that read my book and then come back and say, I asked my financial advisor about all these things I was learning, and my financial advisor was like, how did you know that? Who's talking to you? Who else are you talking to? And they're like, I just read your book, And so I think this is good for us to know what financial advisors are doing with our money, and find one that is right for you. The book arms you in order to have a strong dialogue and question what they're doing and understand what they're doing with your money.
Is there anything else, Linda, that you would like to, that we didn't talk about that you would like to add? Is there something a question I missed?
I think we pretty much covered it all. I think if anything, what I would like to share is touching on the being positive. It's important for us to understand that we are capable of doing so much more than we understand at this current moment in time, and that everything that is around you right now in this moment, every article, whether it's our clothing, the chair that you're sitting on, the cup at your desk, the headphones, whatever it is, all of that was a thought in someone's mind. That was a thought. And so everything starts as a thought. Without our thoughts, there is no money. So at the core of money, at the core of currency is only our thoughts. Without us, money doesn't exist. Money exists because we think, and then we turn what we think into something that creates value in other people's lives and then generates money. So at the core of what I want you to take away from today is to understand that your mind is unlimited, despite of your circumstances, where you come from, how much money you have or you don't have. Everything you need is within your mind. And so the stock market for me is just a component to help the money that you've brought in to help you multiply that money in different ways and perceive money from a completely different space. And so I don't want for anyone to walk away from this to think that the stock market is not for them. It is absolutely for you. And the knowledge that comes with understanding the stock market is priceless. It is priceless because you're getting to understand business from a completely different perspective. Like most of the publicly traded companies are companies that are to some extent dictating our lives and the technology that we use and how we move on a day-to-day basis. And getting to understand how these companies work as an investor in these companies is so valuable. So I think if anything, I would just like for folks to take that away, that it's not just about learning about the stock market. It's a much more deeper experience that happens internally with our money mindset and then is reflected in money form in our portfolio.
Yeah. And so it's safe to say that you truly believe that manifestation or spirituality, whatever you want to call it, is definitely connected to your wealth. Like it's all intertwined.
It is a reflection. And it's so hard for us to sometimes like come to terms with that because we've seen so much scarcity or injustice in marginalized communities. But when we continue to focus on that versus focus on our internal power and what we can create, then that's what's going to be manifested for ourselves in our lives. I really, truly believe that the amount of money that we bring in and that we have is a reflection of how much we value ourselves internally. And the faster that we can come to terms with that realization, the faster that we can value ourselves even more and ask for higher paying wages at our jobs as Latinas and demand for what we deserve.
Yes, it's valuing ourselves and giving us our place, and what I always tell you guys, knowledge is power, and this is a great way. Like for me, I'm going to definitely read this book because it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time, but I've been too afraid. That's just the truth. And that's what it is. Like the more knowledge you have about a certain subject, the more confident you feel about speaking about it, about doing it, about taking that step. You completely changed my mindset and the perspective that I had on the stock market. Like in just this conversation, so I could just imagine reading and finishing the book. So honestly, thank you. Thank you so much. Before you go, you have a podcast called Investies.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your platform and being so generous. Investies is a passion project with myself and another production company where we break down economics and the stock market in very easy terms. I give definitions. I don't just speak at you. I'm speaking to you and explaining what is happening in the economy and with the stock market. It's super short, 8 to 20 minutes long, depending on what type of news is happening. We also like to, keep it real and infuse some spirituality in there because, we're spiritual beings and money's spiritual.
I love it. Oh my goodness. I'm going to listen to it. You guys listen to Investies and listen to Chiquis and Chill, okay? Okay, and your book. Okay, so the book is called, again, you guys, Wealth Warrior, 8 Steps for Communities of Color to Conquer the Stock Market. Can you share your socials with us?
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Luz Warrior, Luz.
Okay, awesome. All right. Yeah. So Luz Warrior, you guys follow her. I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Linda, you've been amazing. Thank you for what you're doing for the world, for our community, for making it so easy to understand. I think this is what we all needed. And I'm super inspired. I really am. I'm inspired to go and invest, in where we live. And we deserve it, you guys. We deserve to own a piece of America. Honestly, you put it in the best way. And you guys, before you go, I always have my motivational quote. And the motivational quote for the day is, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Another one. The goal isn't more money. The goal is financial freedom. Those I thought were great for today's, subject and what we're talking about. And again, Linda, qué linda, hermosa, la verdad, qué bonito. I love this conversation and I hope you enjoyed it too. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for listening to this episode. And yeah, it's definitely going to be one that I'm going to listen to over and over. All right, guys. Thank you. Los quiero mucho. Besitos a todos. Thank you. Do you need advice on love, relationships, health, y más? I'm so excited to share with you that my Chiquis and Chill podcast will have an extra episode drop each week. I'll be answering all your questions. Just leave me a voice message con todas tus preguntas y yo te las voy a contestar personalmente. All you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/Chiquis and Chill podcast and record your questions. I can't wait to hear from you. This is a production of iHeartRadio and the My Cultura Podcast Network. Follow us on Instagram at My Cultura Podcast and follow me, Chiquis, that's CHIQUIS. For more podcasts from iHeart, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and check us out on YouTube.